3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, this meeting of the Akron Charter Review Commission is called to order. Someone prepared to call the roll?
Would you like help with that?
Yeah, I was asking whether someone was prepared to call the roll.
I don't think so, but we can quickly do that. I have the list.
I don't have the list in front of me, so if somebody has the list.
I can. Okay. Margot Somerville. I don't believe she's present yet. Barbara Brown.
Present.
Rana Matar.
Present.
Bill Rich.
Present.
Pedro Avalos II.
Present.
Jim Simon. James Simon. Thought I saw you.
Sorry, present. My phone was muted. My computer was not.
No problem. John Blickel.
Present.
Matt Timbrook.
I am here.
And then Donald Christian. Have you joined us yet? I don't think so. And that's the roll.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the May 12th meeting? That was the revised version that was sent around. When was that? This morning? I've lost track. I think it was this morning. It might have been late last night. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
A motion.
So moved.
Thank you. Any corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor of adopting the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
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 The only comment I was going to make, I didn't realize that I was the vice chair, but that's fine.
That was in the actual ordinance where each of the members were appointed. So you is the vice chair.
All right.
Any opposed? The minutes are adopted. Let me just say a few things about well, really what I wanted to talk about is in my remarks is the procedure for the commission. We do have some proposed charter some proposals concerning charter amendments to consider today, and they're all coming from the administration, from most immediately from the city law department. And we'll take them up in the order in which they appear on the agenda. In general, because this is a small body, I think what we'll do toward the beginning of the consideration of each of these items is to ask for someone from the city to make a short presentation to us about what the proposed amendments are intended to accomplish, why they're needed, and then have some discussion. We may, in the process of that discussion, identify some clarifications or changes, etc. We may or may not be able to proceed beyond that by unanimous consent. If we're all of one mind, we'll be able to do that. If we're not, then we'll adhere to Robert's Rules of Order. And so if at any point somebody wishes to object to anything that we're doing, feel free to do that, and I will switch into Robert's Rules of Order mode. But I think that for the most part, we'll probably be able to proceed by unanimous consent. We'll see. Are there any questions about about procedure?
Donald Christian has joined the meeting.
Oh, good. Hello, Donald. Welcome. Okay. Any questions about how we are to proceed? If not, let's get down to business. First item has to do with the part of the charter that concerns the Department of Finance, and specifically Section 95, Purchasing Agent Board of Control. Who's going to talk us through that?
Hello, my name's Shelley Goodrich. I'm the Deputy Finance Director, and I'm going to be presenting on this piece.
Hi, Shelley.
Hi. You ready to roll?
We are ready to roll.
Okay, wonderful. I'm going to share my screen. I did put together a PowerPoint just to kind of hit the highlights. I did want to first explain, I came back to the city. I previously worked here. I came back in September. Once I started working, the mayor really wanted us to look towards how we could be a more diverse and inclusive in our procurement process. So I really did a deep dive into that department, went out and visited other purchasing divisions at the city of Dayton, the Northeast Ohio Sewer District, the city of Grand Rapids, and have spoken to professionals at other entities as well. So through this process, we've determined that some of our charter needs to be changed. And we also are going to be requesting that our legislation be updated on our bidding processes here at the city of Akron. So this is all part of a greater effort so that we can embark on the mayor's goal of just being more inclusive and making sure that we are able to adequately include our small businesses, our minority businesses in our spend. So just wanted to give you guys a little background before we dive into what we have found. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, and then see if I can make this full screen. Oh, geez. What? Oh, gotcha. I should be able to hit, oh, there we go. Hit F5. So these, as we stated, are charter revisions to Section 95, which deals with the purchasing agent. This is the original section as it currently stands. Currently, anytime we want to make a purchase in excess of $5,000, we have to take the purchase to the Board of Control. And if you think about this dollar amount in today's society, most of our purchases, especially when we're buying in bulk, exceed this dollar threshold. Board of Control meets on Mondays at 11:30 a.m. So it is a Board of Control that we normally pre-COVID would meet together, public meeting, and we would go through the purchases and approve them. Any contracts for materials, services, equipment, and supplies in excess of $15,000 are currently required to go to council under the current charter as it stands today. So we are requesting that we increase these threshold dollar amounts. So the amount that it would be required to go to city council would be $50,000. The amount that would be required to go to Board of Control would be $15,000. The charter amounts have not been updated in the last 20 years, and they're much lower than our peer municipalities. I took a deep dive at other cities. Some cities have as high as $75,000. Other cities, especially those around us, Cuyahoga Falls, Canton, large cities, Columbus, Cincinnati, have a threshold of $50,000 or above. This is also the amount that the state set for statutory municipalities in ORC 73505. So if there's not a charter provision like the city of Cuyahoga Falls designated the amount, it would fall under this ORC provision, and that would be the amount that would require council approval. So Akron's charter restricts the city even further than the current state limits. And the state limits were increased in 2012. So it's been over 8 years since those limits were increased by the state. The low dollar thresholds do create a heavy administrative burden, as most purchases are required to go through the competitive sealed bidding process, which kicks in once purchases are required to go to council. Competitive sealed bidding is really creating a predicament to allowing our smaller and minority businesses to compete. There's a lot more rules that are required. They have to have it in a sealed envelope. It has to be dropped off or submitted by a certain time. They have to fill out everything adequately, or else their bid's going to be thrown out. So by increasing the threshold to 50,000, we would not be required to do competitive sealed bidding unless it hit that $50,000 threshold. And this would also allow the city to save significant time and money, resulting in just things being inefficient. Because we're required to go to Board of Control and City Council for those low dollar amounts, it takes a lot more bureaucracy to get things through those processes. The outdated thresholds have been identified as an impediment to contracting with the city, even for these small and minority owned businesses. So a lot of our smaller businesses, when they look at that bid packet, they get overwhelmed. They don't know how to fill it out. It's very complicated. And so we want to take that impediment away. We want to be able to freely contract with those smaller and minority owned businesses without having to go through the burdensome competitive sealed bidding process. So this is just very important to Mayor Horgan and his overall strategy to include these businesses with our spend. So I'm going to kick it over to Sean Volman. He's here with me and he's going to speak on public advertisement.
Gotta unmute it. Yes, this is Sean. With a public advertisement, we currently have to go to the Board of Control, or I'm sorry, we usually have to advertise in a newspaper of general circulation for 2 times in 2 consecutive weeks for all of our bids over $15,000. The state has changed some of that over the years, but we again are limited by our charter and having to follow these provisions. What we would like to do is provide that the advertising can occur on the city's website, or in the alternative by other measures that the state has determined is appropriate for cities to public advertise. So we have that 2 things in there. One is that public advertisement includes publication on our website for 2 weeks, or we can take advantage of any other, in the future, so we can stay current, that we can use any other method that the state approves for municipalities. There are a number of other cities that do publish only on their websites or allowed to only online publish, including Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Dublin. And I think Shelley has more information on how much we spend on advertising each year.
Yeah, so as you can see, our publication costs are quite high. In 2018, we spent about $205,000. In 2019, we spent a little over $190,000. And some of the costs from last year actually were paid in 2020. So the cost of having to publicly advertise is very high.
And, we do put our bids on our engineering website anyway, and we think this would be a much more efficient way of going about having one location for everybody that's interested in bidding with the city of Akron to look at, without requiring them to either purchase or subscribe to other media to do so.
Okay.
And that's all we really have to present. We would be willing to field questions as you guys have.
So are there questions about this proposal? I do have a couple of technical points having to do with the drafting of it, but let's focus on the substance first.
actually, I have a procedural question as well, if I might. In the future, it'd be really nice if we could get red lines so that we could actually see the changed language. I mean, I ran one in Microsoft Word, but the problem is with the different formatting of the different drafts, it would probably mark more than it needed to, and it made it very hard to follow.
And Jim,
I
we
agree
initially,
with Jim.
yeah, we initially did attempt to do that, but we rewrote so much of it that it didn't seem to make sense. It would just be basically a lined out section and a new section a lot of the
Yeah,
times.
that's what it seemed.
Yeah, I think some of the other sections and maybe even the ones later on today do have redlining, but it for this specific one, it didn't seem to make the most sense.
Other questions or comments?
I guess I had a question. This is Matt. And I kind of wish I had more time to prepare on some of these, but when doing away with some of the threshold for small businesses, it makes a lot of sense, but what does the law department think should be the new standard for a business applying rather than having to fill out this packet? What is the operational step moving forward that you're intending?
Well, I think we would still, send out requests. We would still send out, I think the term that we use internally for the smaller purchases is a request for quotations. We would still do that. We would still provide for competition for purchases and, but try to do it in a more streamlined manner like we do for purchases currently under 15,000. We have a streamlined way to submit quotes for that. We would just extend that to a higher dollar figure.
Okay, so you're not necessarily creating a new process. You're kind of moving the requirements.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. All right.
Other questions or comments? I will say that this makes complete sense to me. It obviously needed to be, the amounts needed to be updated and the method of advertisement, as much as that may hurt newspapers of general circulation, and they are in trouble, it really, advertising on the website makes all the sense in the world.
I guess I'll go ahead, Jim.
No, go ahead.
I was going to add two small points. One, I agree exactly with what you said, Professor Rich. I think also, frankly, we have to, there's a reason why newspapers of general circulation 30 years ago were where people advertised because people read them, and today people acquire information differently. And I would say that I think there's one other cost that's probably harder to capture for the city, but I know when I worked with the county and we'd have to do our competitive bids, I mean, we tried to quantify the cost of actually putting together a competitive bid. I mean, it was at that time, I think, in excess of probably $7,000 to $10,000 if you took into account lawyer time, people time, counsel time, just to do something rather simple. So, you look at this and we're probably in many cases putting out bids for things that cost the city a lot more to bid it than the value of the item being acquired. So I think this makes a lot of sense.
Hey, Bill, I guess I had one additional question for the law department. The $50,000 threshold makes perfect sense, but will in 10 years, are we just catching up to 10 years ago? Is there any benefit, and there's probably a double-edged sword, but is there any benefit to going to a higher threshold, 70,000, 75,000, or is the next commission going to be tasked with raising that level once again? I'm not necessarily advocating for that, but was that considered as a step getting ahead of the revised code versus just trying to catch up?
I think it was considered. We just, I think, felt that the argument to the citizens is, we're not trying to power grab more than we have the opportunity right now.
Right.
We could, and at any time as well, we could, take this, if the laws change again, we could take it back. But, I think the thought was that 15,000, I mean, to me, even 15,000 to 50,000 sounds like an awful lot.
Yeah.
Another thing that we did with the $15,000 for the Board of Control, pick that number because then that would still at least be a separate set of eyes to look at everything that had to go to council in the past. So it's not this that it's do what you want. There's still everything that had to go to council in the past would still need Board of Control approval under this new framework.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on this? Let me just share my screen for a second. There are a couple of things I want to.
I have one quick question for everyone. Do I look like I'm out of the matrix with my background?
And I had one other quick question. If we, in this drafted to avoid what I call the Josh Mandel problem of people sort of accumulating small purchases that fall under the thresholds, essentially, do we have like, if you buy 3 things that are $14,000 a year from a vendor, is it drafted to avoid those kinds of things where people intentionally would make purchases fall just under the line?
So we're definitely aware, and that currently kind of departments try to do that. So we're constantly looking for kind of what we call structuring, where they're kind of breaking out purchases. It's the same thing, but they submit multiple requisitions right under that dollar amount. So that is a part of our process. And we are in the middle of going through an implementation of a new HCM software and financial software, Workday, which is going to bring our technology even farther along with procurement, and we will definitely be able to monitor for that, because that is not what we want nor intend for our employees to do, and we will also educate them and have educated them in the past against embarking on that and doing that to avoid the threshold limits.
Sort of analogous to the money laundering statute. I did want to point out a couple of things about the drafting. The first is the first highlighted item, which you should be able to see on the screen since I'm sharing it. When authorized by council, competitive bidding and advertisement are not required. When authorized by council modifies competitive bidding and advertisement. No, it wasn't meant to, but it does. And so what it's literally saying is if council authorized the competitive bidding and advertisement, they're not required, which is, I think, the opposite of what was meant. It should be something like competitive bidding and advertisement are not required if the council, something to the effect that if the council dispenses with that requirement, right? So I think that needs a little work. And then
So
the
maybe
other
the,
one, the
just-
other highlighted item
just
down
adding in
below,
here, maybe
this is in
the
the original. This
correction
is
would
not
be
new
when
with this one, but I was thinking as
dispensed
long
with by council, or when the requirement is dispensed.
or when the requirement is waived by council, something like that.
Or when, yeah.
Yeah, you see the problem that when authorized by
A
council, it
negative
modifies
verb as
competitive.
opposed to a positive verb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we can work on that. We don't need to approve this in this meeting, in the final version in this meeting. I think sounds like we're all agreed on this, on the substance of this. And we might need to fiddle with the language a little. And the other item is in the beginning of the next paragraph, no contract, agreement, or other obligation involving the expenditure of money shall be entered into, nor shall be lawful. It should be, nor shall it be lawful unless the director of finance. This is in the original. This is not a proposed change, but I was thinking as long as we're monkeying with it, we might as well just fix that. Those are the two technical points that I thought could stand to be fixed. I'm going to stop sharing now. As I say,
This is Barb.
go ahead.
This is Barbara. There are a couple of things that I noticed in here too that I questioned. In the second paragraph, it states, subject to the authority of council, the purchasing agent shall administer the sale or disposal of personal property of the city. I'm thinking we want to change that to the sale or disposal of the city's personal property no longer needed. That makes more sense to me. And then the second paragraph, I think we left out non-professional services. When you look in the very first paragraph, the authority is for material, equipment, supplies, and non-professional services. We neglected to include non-professional services in the third paragraph.
Was
And
that
my
intentional?
only-
I was just going to ask folks from the city whether that was intentional or inadvertent.
hmm I'd have to look back at my notes.
Okay.
I can't think of a reason as to why we would not have non-professional services there. Except, I mean, the only thing I'm thinking is shall be purchased for a department.
I think it might just be because that's how it was written in the original.
hmm
So we would need to update it.
And my only other comment for this one, for Article 95, is the last paragraph, B. We have the pronoun of his. I think we should say, we shouldn't have a his or a her.
Or just get rid of the pronoun.
I thought we did fix it.
Did I
I thought,
because we changed chairman to chairperson.
but his or her, it says his or her up
Go
top.
to the
but
next
then-
line.
Then, okay. All right. Okay.
Anything else on that? If not, I'll work with the law department on the wording of that one item that needs a little work yet.
Thank you.
And we'll bring it back. Okay, next. Let me get my agenda back here. Okay. In the section of in the part of the charter concerning the mayor, we have section 54, powers and duties.
Yeah, good evening, Professor Rich. Can you hear me? This is Brian
Yes.
Angeloni.
Hi, Brian.
Hi. Good evening, members of the commission. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'll be taking you through a couple of these other provisions here, starting with section 54. So really what we're doing here is we're adding a new section 5. So I'll start by telling you what we're doing and then sort of the purpose behind it. So we're adding a new section 5, which sort of explicitly permits the mayor to create, abolish administrative departments, divisions, bureaus, et cetera. Secondly, the change, the proposal deletes language in new section 6 that would limit the mayor's control over departments, divisions to those departments or divisions created by the charter or council. And I'll get into a little more about the council component of that later on. So really the purpose of the suggested edits, at a high level, it's kind of to better clarify the administrative and legislative roles of the mayor and city council by vesting power to create or eliminate departments in the administration with the head of the administration, which is the mayor. The proposal would not be limited to those departments or divisions prescribed by the charter. So in another section of the charter, there's actually and we'll get to that later, section 59, it outlines these are the departments that are created under this charter. It's not limiting that authority to those particular departments, but it would apply to newly created departments as well. So going back to my other comment, if the commission were to adopt this proposal, then we would also propose some corresponding changes to Charter Section 31, which isn't part of the agenda tonight, but we would, I guess, get to that again if this was something that the commission was agreeable to pursuing further. But basically, that talks about city council's authority to create departments in the city administration, which we view as kind of not within the sphere of their power, right? So that's really not a legislative function per se. So we would propose altering that, again, assuming that the commission was agreeable with some of these changes. So those are kind of the high levels of these proposed changes.
So why don't we discuss the general concept before we get into the weeds? Anybody wish to address the general idea?
I just want to make sure I understand it correctly, if I may. Is what we're saying that essentially if there's something that the mayor can create, the mayor can also abolish it. But what about things that council can create or has created? What's the interplay there?
Hi,
Yeah.
this is Yamini. I can respond on this one. So the current charter language actually under 31 has where the council can create departments. That's not generally what council does, and nor is it in conformance with what's actually been happening. They have been actually in the role of approving the changes or decisions that the mayor may make regarding creating a department. That's how it's been in here. And so this is really to kind of make clear and conform with what the practice has been, is that the mayor would actually create and abolish the departments. Council's role in this process as a legislative body would be to approve those type of changes or additions.
But I guess my question is, if we're doing this and there is something that's truly a creature of council, council establishes a task force for A, B, or C. The mayor would not have any power to abolish that under this.
No, this is dealing with administrative, internal day-to-day operations of the city. This has nothing to do with, council has their own set of rules of creating their own task force for their issues that they want to explore. It's very.
Was this tournament like a decade or so ago when there was some conflict? I was trying to remember where this came from. I remember it vaguely, but not well. I was thinking this was like an initiative that 31, it was an initiative that maybe council put up some time ago on their own, or certain people did.
Oh, I'm not sure I'm familiar with the history on that.
I remember this issue coming up. I was just trying to remember the context of it. But thank you for the clarification. That helped and makes a lot of sense to me.
I don't recall it coming up 10 years ago.
No.
But perhaps 20 years ago. I don't know.
Well, sometimes we think it's 10 and it's 20.
Well, I mean, I was on the Charter Review Commission 10 years ago, and I'm pretty sure it didn't come up.
I didn't think it came up through Charter Review. I thought there was an initiative process or something that a few of the more aggressive folks did. But it may not be.
Other questions or comments about the general idea?
My only comment would be, I believe, from looking at the charter, that section 31 itself is original to the original charter. There is a section 31A, which I believe is another, which relates to boards and commissions, that was adopted in 1980. But I don't believe there has actually been any change to this section since the initial adoption of the charter.
Okay. Further thoughts, or shall we proceed to the individual proposed changes? Hearing no further thoughts, let me get that document here and share it. goes not at all to the substance of the change, once again. And in fact, once again, it's in the original this way. But read this sentence. In addition to the foregoing, and except as otherwise provided in this charter, his duties and his power, by whether we should make that gender neutral, his duties and powers shall be 7. He shall have the right to introduce ordinances. Right? That's supposed to be all one sentence. His duties and powers shall be, he shall have the right to introduce ordinances, and et cetera. That should be just a separate sentence rather than number 7 of that sentence. While we're in here fixing stuff, can we fix that?
Would the recommendation be to take out the words "he shall have the right" and just have it start with 2 as the other sections do?
Oh yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah, to introduce ordinances and take part in the discussion of all matters coming before council. Yeah, that does it. Okay. Was there anything else on, sorry, I stopped sharing a little prematurely. Is there anything else on section 54, excuse me? If not, then the next one was.
There is another, oops, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
There is one, I don't know, Brian, did you go over number 6?
Oh, you're still in 54, is it?
Yeah.
Let me go back.
Yeah, I mentioned that, and again, that's a sort of that limiting language. We're limit this power by restricting it to those divisions and things created by the charter or created by council. It's broader than that, right? So that's why the reason for the deletion there.
Let me get that back up here. Okay, now you're saying there was a deletion where?
So it'd be a new paragraph 6. So if you're
Okay.
looking at the red line version, you'll be able to see that.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. All right, here we go. Exercise control over all departments and divisions no longer will say created by charter or that may hereafter be created by council. That looks fine to me. Anybody else want to comment on that? Okay.
No comment on that. There was another pronoun that I think in the second paragraph that needs to be changed.
Actually, one question about 5. On the employee compensation piece, is council currently, how does that work? It's like with the county, I know council will approve changes in compensation. With this, A, does council currently approve changes in compensation for members of the administration? And B, with this, would council have any authority over that?
So council does not generally get into the administrative aspect of this, the compensation paid. Ultimately, they approve the budget, which would factor that in, but that's not, again, this is like in the weeds kind of stuff, not like council approval type things.
As long as we're not monkeying with the current process where anybody could argue we're, giving more power to the executive and taking power away from council, that makes sense.
Yeah,
I'm trying to anticipate arguments.
Consistent with that statement, yes.
So the language that I highlighted in yellow doesn't quite parse, at least as far as I can tell. To create and abolish offices, departments, divisions, and bureaus, and to provide by ordinance or resolution to prescribe, limit, or change the compensation of all officers and employees. First of all, this is in reference to the powers of the mayor. So the first thing that threw me was to provide for by ordinance. And the mayor doesn't pass ordinances, mayor signs ordinances, but council passes them. And then the ordinance or resolution. But then to provide for, to prescribe, there's just something wrong with this, the grammar there, the syntax. What were you trying to say?
Tammy, you might have to help with this one, but I think we were just trying to say to create and abolish offices, departments, divisions, and bureaus, and to prescribe, I don't know if that, and to provide for by ordinance or resolution with that, and to prescribe, limit, or change the compensation. It was really to make sure that we were being conforming to how it works here.
You see
I'll have
this.
to look at that. I don't know why that.
You see the syntactical problem.
I do.
And also one more practical question consistent with Professor Rich's question. Is it officers? Are there I mean, how does that work? How does that jive with council? I mean, for example, I know council has officers. I assume the city has officers. I think we just want to make sure that to the extent council sets their own pay or does so under the Constitution, that we aren't creating conflict with who officers are. I just think officers is probably a little.
So generally, I don't think there's anything, and when we scoured through this, there is really no, council doesn't set pay for anyone, really.
Well, who sets council's pay?
That's council.
That's my question, Professor, because if we say that the mayor may set pay for officers, council has officers. And so
I'm
we're going
agree.
to say officers, I think we need to say which officers we're speaking of.
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree.
Okay, you can take a look at that.
You need to refine it so that it refers only to the executive branch of the city, not the legislative branch.
Yeah.
This is Tammy. As far as the prescribe, limit, or change, this is going to go along with the changes to the human resource sections that will allow the HR department to work with the administration on like setting pay for like new jobs or revised jobs. And we can check with HR on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what they meant by prescribe.
Oh yeah, I wasn't questioning the meaning of prescribe. That was one of the few words I understood here.
Yeah,
but, and it would make sense if it just said, and to prescribe, limit, or change the compensation of all officers and employees. It's the intervening words that I couldn't make sense of.
If I could just add one thing as well to the conversation about setting council salaries, there is actually a section of the charter that speaks to that. And it's section 53, and it says the salary of the mayor shall be fixed by ordinance and shall be, I think councils is a separate section, but there's a section specific that deals with the setting of council salaries by ordinance, I believe.
But then we don't want to have conflict between the two.
Correct. So we could even refer to that's cross-reference that section as well.
Does the city have a department or office that they're thinking of creating, or is it more just language so that they're ready for any situation that comes to play?
I mean, it's nothing right now, but we can tell you that in a situation you're going to see as we get to the next section here and under the mayor's authorities, there was one case where there was just a department created, and we went through this exact process where the city created, the mayor created the department, it went through council for approval. So it's to keep that, not have that kind of, keep that open. It's not necessarily for something specific right now or anything.
Okay, thank you.
So that reminds me of a question that occurred to me earlier when someone, I guess it was Brian, talked about the council approving. And what I'm wondering is, with this change, why would council need to approve this?
Good question. I mean, the way the ordinance, when you look at when you get to looking at the council's powers, it states that the council would create and abolish offices and departments. It doesn't make sense because in reality, it never really functions that way. They don't engage in those type of day-to-day activities. You know, again, this is one of those things where rather than just completely remove it, we kept, and it talks about in that section 31 about a 2/3 vote also. I mean, we made some changes to that section as well, which, you know, are not part of today's agenda, but it is a good question as to, you know, the mayor, the executive's role in creating a department and making determinations regarding the operations of the city as being the executive's role. Why would you seek council's approval? But
Right,
I mean-
and there's some, I think, I'm sorry, go ahead,
Go ahead.
Professor.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's some logical inconsistencies that, you know, altering section 31 when we're talking about removing this quote unquote power of council to create departments. I think it makes logical sense because, you know, if you look at section 4, even not as revised, but just as it is, it talks about the mayor exercising control over all departments and right, and over those employees. And also, in the charter, it's very clear that no member of council is permitted to direct or require a member of the administration under the mayor to do anything. So they cannot direct employees of the administration to take action on their behalf. Except for, so I think by removing that you know, that provision talking about, you know, council creating a department, for example, makes sense. If council created a separate department, the department of, you know, whatever, who would staff that? Who would have the control over that department? It would be the mayor. So it just doesn't make, I think there's some logical inconsistencies with the way that the language currently reads.
Well, and so let me just make sure I understand. You are going to be later proposing a change to the council's powers to eliminate its power to create departments. Is that right? Create or abolish?
Yeah, again, assuming that the commission was you know, receptive to this
Right.
proposed change, logical next step.
Right. Yeah. So, right. You don't want to end up with council having the power and the mayor having the power. It's got to be one or the other. As to whether there's any, you know, contradiction between the council not having the power to direct employees of the city in the departments and the council having the power to determine what departments shall exist. I mean, you know, there's no inconsistency there. That's the way it works in the federal government. Congress actually creates the departments. They don't exercise control over the people in the departments. So I mean, it can be that way. I'm not suggesting it ought to be that way, but it can be that way. So I wouldn't offer that argument in support of this. The question is, you know, whose role should it be to create and abolish offices, departments, divisions, and bureaus, the council or the mayor? And the proposal is to make it the mayor instead of the council. Anybody have thoughts they want to express on that? If we do go ahead, though, we need to fix this wording.
I mean, I guess isn't this, I mean, you know, the charters are sort of an evolving document. They reflect the city's values, and different cities have different perspectives on it. And I mean, I think if we're going to get into that conversation, it might be helpful to have at least a little bit of a primer as to sort of how it evolved to the way it is. And maybe, you know, it would also be helpful to know what some of our other peer cities do.
And let me add, now that I'm stopped sharing the screen, I can see that Margot has joined us. It'd be interesting to have the point of view of the council on this.
Bill, thank you so much. This is Margot Somerville. And is that Mr. Angeloni? Just
Yeah,
talking-
Brian Angeloni
Brian?
was talking a bit ago.
In Somerville, how are
Okay.
you?
Good. And so this is the piece about council not being able to give directives to the administration. Is that what we're on?
Well, no, that was just mentioned in the course of discussing what we are on, which is granting the mayor the power to create and abolish departments, bureaus, offices, and
Okay.
one other thing, as opposed to council.
Okay. And that's how the charter currently is, correct?
Currently, the charter says council has that power.
Okay, and we're talking about changing it?
Yes, that's the
So we're
proposal.
going to, okay. So the proposal is to give the mayor the power versus the majority of council to make those decisions.
That's the proposal, yes, from the administration.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in favor, only because, I mean, you know, we're fortunate, you know, we have a good mayor, Mayor Horgan, you know, I don't know what the next few years will bring, who it will bring. So that's the only thing that concerns me about making that type of a change versus leaving it to the majority of council members who are elected by the entire city of Akron. So I just kind of want to put that out there.
I think it will be helpful to see what, as Commissioner Simon said, what other peer cities do, what their relationship is. Because I mean, there probably is no one correct answer. It's just what this commission thinks, if it should stay the same or if it's something that should be looked at.
I would be curious a little bit about the history of this, and some of you may be able to help us out here.
And just kind of curious too, as to, and I don't know if Brian can speak to this, as to why are we asking to make this change?
All right, I got to work the mute button faster here. So, yeah, so Margo, I would point out too that the insertion of this language in section 54 isn't an unchecked power. There would be another provision of the charter that would allow council must approve any creation or abolishment of departments. So ultimately, there is a check on the power of the mayor in council. So that is not being done away with in any way. So I think that really again, the core reason that, the purpose, that we had in making the edit was to, we kind of viewed this as an administrative function, something that is properly vested with the head of the administration and not with the legislative branch of the city. So that's kind of like the underlying overall rationale. It just made rational sense to us, logical sense to us.
So that makes me wonder, that mangled language about ordinance or resolution that's in there, was that meant to say something to the effect that, it has to be approved by the council? Because without such language, this would indicate that the mayor wouldn't have to get the approval of the council.
Right, that's what it's saying.
The language that sort of ended up being word salad in here about ordinance, to provide for by ordinance or resolution. I'm just wondering whether that was meant to say, doesn't accomplish it, but whether that was meant to indicate that council approval is required.
Yeah, I mean, probably could be better worded, but that's what I think that's, probably was the line of thinking we were having, is that because of the other section that we changed under 31, where council's authority would be to be the approver, this would mean, really should be saying that, that the mayor, while creating and having the power to create and abolish departments, would present to council for approval. Not properly, maybe not the best wording here, but probably was a line.
You're underselling it when you say it's not the best wording.
Well, I said,
It's
I don't know.
incoherent.
I'm just saying it doesn't, the way, the grammar, I'm just saying it may not be that clear, but the fact that it's in there, I think the intent is that it would be presented to council, like Margot as an example, like when the Department of Integrated Development, which you're going to see in the next section 59 that Brian will go over here, was created by the mayor. It was presented to council and a presentation was made by Hardy and his team for council's approval for the department. So we're just trying to conform with actually the manner in which these departments are created and then presented for approval. So that was a check.
Okay, but I just want to make sure, because what you're saying in the proposal, the proposed change, that wouldn't happen. So the mayor would make the decision. It would not come before council, correct?
No, because what we have done which we have not, again, that's not on the agenda for tonight, but we have another proposal out there that the commission will be reviewing that talks about council's requirement to approve, okay, under section 31, the creation of these departments.
So if that's what we're going to do, I think you would want
cross-reference that
section 55 to say that, subject to approval by the council or something like that. But why don't we get to the back to the substance of it, which is should it be up to the council as it currently is to create or abolish departments, or should it be up to the mayor, but the mayor has to get the approval of the council?
Professor, if I may, I have a broader question here, because I feel like we're dealing with several isolated issues that are interrelated and I'm getting, I don't know whether I'm getting confused or whether it's just that this is confusing, but I think if we're going to be talking about the respective power dynamics of the mayor and council, I think we need to get all of the pertinent ordinances on the table, look at them together, and then come up with a solution that ties them all together. And maybe we make our next meeting just dealing with that. But to me, this is sort of jarring, going from one to the other. And if we look at this ordinance, we go this way, we're going to go that way with another ordinance. I think we got to figure out globally what we think makes sense, and then look at the ordinances. Because I feel like we're going to keep chasing our tail on this.
I'm actually more optimistic than you are right now. So let me ask this question of folks from the city administration. Are there any other changes that are going to be proposed about the allocation of power between the mayor and the council regarding departments, bureaus, et cetera?
No.
No. Okay. So, Jim, I do think it would have been good if the relevant part of the charter dealing with the city council's powers were in front of us right now. But really, I think this is a pretty simple question that we may need to refine the wording on the proposed changes on it. But I think the basic question that's being presented is, should the power to create and abolish departments remain with the council as it is, or should it be vested in the mayor subject to approval by the council? That I think we could take on, and then, as we did on the previous proposal, send people back to the drawing boards on the wording, and then take them up again. I mean, it's a fairly simple question. I'm not saying that the answer is easy to arrive at, but it's a fairly simple question about, should it be the council's purview solely, subject to veto by the mayor, of course, the council's purview solely to abolish and create departments, or should it require initiative by the mayor and then approval by the council?
I mean, just as a council member, if I can just say one quick thing. I mean, now that, Mr. Richards saying it that way, I have a better understanding. I mean, my thing is, as long as it is coming before council, I'm completely fine with it. If the mayor, again, it's his administration, it's his plan, it's his team, his objectives that he's trying to achieve. And if he has to do whatever he has to do that, I'm okay with giving him that power, but as long as it comes before council for approval. That makes sense to me.
I think, if I may, the example of what happened with the Office of Integrated Development is a good one, because it's exactly in terms of modernizing the function of the city. It was discovered that there needed to be a much more of an interrelationship between economic development planning, and so those things became integrated. And when that happened, that's again to the mayor's idea, taking about, creating a structure and then going to city council for approval of, hey, here's the plan, here's the structure, and then going to city council. So I think it's really about the idea of the mayor creating the structures, and instead of the structures being handed down to the mayor. It's the inverse. It's creating the structure and then going to city council for approval of that structure, whatever it may be, a division, a department, whatever that may be.
If you boil it down to its essence, what it means is that council can't initiate the abolition or creation of a department. The mayor would have to initiate it. We would have to go to council. So, and it couldn't be done unless council approved it, which means in a sense the mayor is proposing it to council. Without the proposal, though, the council can't act, can't abolish or create a department under this proposal.
And I would just add, I mean, who is in the better role of determining the initiation of a department is the administrative body that is dealing with these day-to-day operational issues that, to make those kind of determinations.
I guess I'm thinking of a business organizational chart at the time. I mean, top is the voters, and then the mayor, and then all the departments report to the mayor. So in that terms, it may be, it sounds like it more than not, it is proper to refine some of this language. Ultimately, it's the mayor's office, it's the mayor's the visions that are carrying out his vision. And this, reading through this, it seems like these are reasonable changes that help modernize the language for it.
Other thoughts? So shall we offer this guidance to the representatives of the city administration? Clarify this language and include in section 54 the qualification that the mayor has to get the approval of the council. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
I agree.
Yes.
Okay. Shall we go on to what was next, 54A? Brian?
Sorry. So, so section 54A, this is a completely new section, so there's no red line for you guys to review. And this gives the mayor sort of an explicit power in the event of an emergency. I'm sure you all cannot guess why this sort of arose. But basically it allows the mayor to declare a state of emergency. And during that time, that stated emergency, excuse me, he or she could take appropriate actions to protect the welfare of the residents. Sort of the second part of the proposal, section 2 prescribes the duration of the emergency powers. And it also provides in sort of an important check and balance on the mayor's power, basically saying that at any time, council with a supermajority vote has the ability to end the declared state of emergency. So it would prevent sort of I suppose, a power-hungry executive from running rampant here. But that's the proposal. And again, the purpose is simply to make those emergency powers more centralized in our charter, as opposed to cobbling them together from various revised code provisions or constitutional provisions or charter provisions, and putting them all in sort of one place. Also, it really, I guess, lends itself to allowing the city to move nimbly in the case of a true emergency or disaster. So that's kind of the purpose of it.
And I'm sharing the markup that you see on the document I've shared is my own, so you can ignore that for now. I think we should not focus on the details, but on the general idea first. Thoughts?
I'm in total support of that. I mean, this situation, this pandemic that we're currently in, we understand the importance of, needing to have this in place.
What would be the situation if this perhaps state emergency powers conflict with this proposed City of Akron legislation? Like, has that conflict, I mean, would the city acquiesce, or has that been thought of? Or I was just curious on thoughts on that.
I think if it was declared by the state, the municipality of Akron would already be covered under that.
Well, it's a deep question you're asking, but we are a home rule municipality, so one would have to look at what aspects of what we even today, what could we be doing as a home rule city that is different, for example, than what the state is doing in any number of areas. And that is a very complex area of the law. So our position as the city of Akron would be that we have home rule authority to exercise emergency powers, for the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens, consistent with our home rule authority.
And the state would say preemption.
It could. It really would. And therein lies the battle.
Right? Yeah, it's quite a mess.
I think the other thing is that there certainly could be an emergency that did not affect the entire state, that was only a state of emergency in the city of Akron, in which case, obviously, our authority would be pretty clear if this charter section was adopted.
Yeah, I think that would be the main advantage of it. If we're talking about a not just statewide but worldwide pandemic, for example, the state is probably going to be in a strong position to claim preemption. But if it were a very local problem, that's probably where this would come into play the most.
What operationally would be different with this power in terms of, okay, he has this ability, how does he trigger this emergency? What changes versus the normal day-to-day process? Is that still to come? Is this kind of the lure into the water, and then this is there and it's something that can be developed over time?
I think the context of what occurs is, would differentiate the what power is exercised. I'm not sure if I understand your question exactly, but I think the context of the emergency will in many ways determine what the scope of the executive declaration is going to be.
Okay.
Any other comments? It's a pretty broad power, I'll say that. All actions, I would change as to that. All actions that are necessary or incidental to protect the health, morals, comfort, safety, convenience, and welfare of the inhabitants of the city.
One quick question for the drafters. I assume we use other cities' state of emergency statutes as a model for doing this. And maybe if you could just give us a sense of the cities, just in case anybody tries to say that this is overbroad.
Yep,
So-
you can-
That doesn't need to be answered now, but just at some point would be helpful.
Yeah, so what I can comment on that is because I had a heavy hand in putting this together. I would say that there are not very many municipalities that have an explicit emergency powers provision. I think that that's going to change, but when we were actually coming up with language, a lot of the provisions and things were taken from other ordinances. So if you look at other municipality codified ordinances, they had more specific emergency powers contained within. Again, because this is, the city's constitution, we're trying to keep it very broad. As Professor Rich points out, it is very broad, but it's intentionally done so. We didn't want to put line items necessarily in here about which explicit powers they were going to wield, but leaving it up to the situation to govern, right? It could be that this is subsequently, fleshed out, put the meat on the bones through ordinance, but that could be, something in the future.
I'm not sure. I think if this goes in the charter, I'm not sure how much room there is for legislation to refine it. It's certainly not to limit it. And what causes me pause is not, to protect the health or the safety of inhabitants of the city. Those make sense, but the comfort, the convenience, the welfare, the morals, I wonder whether all of that is needed.
That gives me pause as well.
I mean, the mayor, should in an emergency be able to act to protect public health and public safety. I'm not sure about the rest.
Brian, can you speak to why you added that?
In addition to the powers the mayor already possesses, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, what I can say is that we're trying to cover our bases, right? So
Wait, you covered them all.
Yeah, but the comfort, security, and convenience doesn't sound like an emergency to me.
That's what I can tell you. I mean, other than that, much else.
Well, there are two different things here. The first is, what's the trigger for this power, right? The trigger is that it's got to be a time of emergency, which includes but isn't limited to all those things that are enumerated there. Then once the mayor's emergency powers have been triggered by one or more of those events, then there are the powers that the mayor has as long as that time of emergency continues to exist. And it's really the latter that we've been talking about just now. It's what does the mayor get to do when there is an emergency? All actions that are necessary or incidental to protect the health, morals, comfort, safety, convenience, and welfare of the inhabitants of the city. They didn't get to do those things unless there's unless there's an emergency. But still, it seems, if the emergency involves some sort of threat to public health or public safety, then the mayor ought to be able to act to protect the public health or public safety. It's hard. I'm hard put to envision a state of emergency based on a threat to public morals or public comfort or public convenience or public welfare, where the mayor would then need to address those things. Those things those normally aren't considered to be emergencies the way threats to public health or public safety are.
Yeah, I mean, and if there are emergency ordinances, like not emergency trying to avoid the 3 meeting rule, but I mean true emergency declaration ordinances have that language, I'd be interested to see them, because it'd be interesting to see sort of the context they came from.
I do think one other thing, if I could speak on the mayor's behalf, I understand the logic of having the powers mirror the nature of the emergency, but I think also, as for instance in this pandemic, had this been a much more serious health threat where we really truly could not convene, council or do other things, the mayor has to basically take care of all city business in the case of an emergency, where other things that, yes, we would normally go through council procedures or other procedures to take care of things like comfort, the mayor may need to do that exclusively if we are truly in a state of emergency. So I think, sorry, I'll mute myself.
This is Tammy. The language about, let me find it again. Health, morals, comfort, safety, convenience, and welfare are already in Charter Section 1, the general powers provision. And this language was mirroring that.
Oh, yeah.
It's the phrase in Section 1 says, may do all things necessary to promote the health, convenience, comfort, and welfare of its citizens and advance the moral, social, physical, and intellectual standard of its citizenship.
Who may do that?
That's in Charter Section 1.
I know, but you left the subject of the sentence out, and I was asking you, who is it who may do that?
These are the general powers of the city.
So the city as a whole may do these things.
Yes.
So I gather the basic idea here is to allow the mayor in its time of emergency to exercise powers that would otherwise belong to council.
I don't know that that's always the case. I think that might be the case potentially, but I think that there are other things that I think would not necessarily require the mayor going to council, but then
the mayor would already have those powers, right? I mean, the reason for this must be to give the mayor some power that the mayor wouldn't otherwise have under the charter. So I wonder whether a more direct way to get at this would, rather than allow the mayor to assume the powers of the council by declaring an emergency, limiting it to emergencies in which the council is unable to meet because of the emergency. So it would make sense to me if the mayor during a time of emergency had the power to protect public health and public safety, and then the power to protect those other things only if the council is unable to meet.
No, because I think, for example, if there are certain administrative functions that are within the mayor's purview, there might be actions taken that would not ever require city council approval.
I know, but
although council could suspend those procedures, so council has the power to suspend, various procedures that are by ordinance.
Eve, if the mayor already has those powers, then in a non-emergency time, time not of emergency, then the mayor has them in a time of emergency as well. So those are not what we're talking about here. We're only talking about things the mayor wouldn't otherwise have the power to do under the charter, or else there's no need for this at all. I think this is written so broadly that it would be a tough sell to the public too.
I'm still not 100% clear on what operationally this triggers. Like what as you're talking about, what is the difference between this power versus what the mayor may or may not already have the ability to do? Like operationally, what does this represent?
I agree with you. I'm not sure you get the power, but what is the power that's been given? To do what?
To take all actions that are necessary or incidental to protect the health, morals, comfort, safety, convenience, and welfare of the inhabitants of the city, which is, which covers everything. It includes things the mayor can do anyway, right? Some of these things the mayor can do, and some of them only the council could authorize the mayor to do or do itself, and probably some of them can't be done at all consistent with the state constitution or the federal constitution. But this would essentially make the mayor an autocrat during a time of emergency.
I might
Subject
suggest, I think that what we can do is revise. I think we need some time to think about it, but I think what we could do is revise, and then we could revisit this next week with some language that alludes to what you're saying, that to the extent that there are matters that are in the purview of city council and they're unable to meet in light of the emergency, we can build that into the language and then, see how you feel about it, and also address some of the broader moral comfort, convenience language.
I think that'd be good.
Well, I just wanted to add, I mean,
if I could just speak on the mayor's behalf again for a second. I think the idea was to say that any power that a city has if the mayor declares a state of emergency, he has those powers. So if it's something that a city can do by our charter, by the state constitution, by the federal constitution, then the mayor person is at the time during a state of emergency would have the power to do those things. So we're trying to keep it as broad as possible, because in a true state of emergency, you don't want any process to be standing in your way to protect the health and safety and potentially other aspects of the public. So maybe there is some wording that needs to be clarified in that way, but I think that was the idea. And yes, generally, I think the other body that has a significant amount of power under the charter is city council, but there are other things, for instance, the board of control has to approve purchases. It would be putting those powers in the hands of the mayor. And with the check of city council being able to basically say the emergency is over, so that he is not an autocrat, he has the check constantly of city council being able to say, we're going to eliminate this emergency and return things to normal.
Well, I mean, for whatever it's worth, my sense is that the commission's at this point a little uncomfortable with the breadth of the power here. And the question is, can it be narrowed so that the mayor can take care of the things that do need to be taken care of without making the power all encompassing, which it is under this proposal. And the other thing I think to think about is, can some of this be conditioned on the inability of the council or perhaps other city entities to meet and function?
I think that makes sense, again, given that council could, through the way it's drafted now, cancel the emergency. That clearly was built into it, so that if council felt they could meet and could take, business could be done as normal, that they would be able to do that. So I'm sure that's something that could be incorporated even more clearly.
Okay.
Question, I have a question.
Mhm.
Should there potentially be some provision therein that gives a time frame upon which the mayor would confer with council regarding the emergency? I mean, he or she would have the ability to declare it initially, but at some point, 24 hours, whatever, to confer with council if they can convene going forward, versus just leaving it open until they decide as a body that, okay, we're going to end this thing. Because I don't see any conference between the two during that period of initiation and the declaration that it's over.
The other thing I might respectfully note, I've just done a little bit of Googling, knowing that you all have looked to some extent at the City of Dublin's codified ordinances and charter, and the firm that's been their law director for many, many years is the firm I do a lot of work with, and the partner who handled the City of Dublin's a dear friend. And I might commend you to Chapter 36 of Title 3 of Dublin's charter, which appears to be a fairly comprehensive and thoughtful emergency management provision, and it has some very nice specific language, and it may be something that it might be a nice middle ground with some of the concerns that have been expressed here, just to read and get a feel for, because it appears to be a very well-written provision, and it has some specifics that might frankly give a lot of the folks on the call some comfort.
Okay, anything else on 54A? Okay, Brian, what was the next one?
So the next one we're looking at section 59, and hopefully this one's a little more strict. Basically what we're doing here, there's one deletion reference to the Department of Health. And again, this is a provision establishing various departments in the city. So we are eliminating the Department of Health, which was merged with the county years ago. We're also including, updating this to include the Department of Integrated Development, which has sort of been created as the Office of Integrated Development currently, and has been sort of the structural framework has been put together and operating. So this would just sort of put this into the charter. So I guess, I'm not really going to belabor anything on the Department of Health. The city merged that operation with the county long ago. And, the Office of Integrated Development sort of, as Eve alluded to earlier, it provides an integrated approach to development in the city, merged related departments, planning, economic development, parts of the Department of Public Service, all into one, so that they could have sort of a holistic approach to aspects of development. Also, note that that department creates some new funding opportunities for the city because there are certain nonprofits that dole out grants that would only look to a city that had such a integrated sort of development department. So that's kind of the overview.
Comments, questions? A lot of rip-roaring controversy on this one.
Were there any, from the department's law, public service, public safety, was things specifically taken from those departments input into integrated development? Like, are you taking stuff out of every one of them for this new department? I mean, I think it's probably a great idea. I just was hoping to get a little bit more clarity on what the effect on the still remaining departments are in comparison to the development of the new integrated development department.
So we can certainly provide you with, there's a lot of material that was presented to council when this department was deployed. There was an 18-month process that the city went through to develop this as a best practice and a way to combine, functions and eliminate silos. So I will just have that email to all of you guys. There's actually a really nice booklet that describes their mission and vision and exactly what's within the integrated development and what remains in our other departments that are related. So
thank you.
The department that's probably most affected was planning and urban development. A lot of their functions are essentially, the entire department is now subsumed within the Office of Integrated Development.
So it almost sounds like Jobs Ohio versus the Department of Development at the state level, kind of that guy. So, okay, thank you.
One question that I have is, are these all the departments? What the question that's leading to is just, if not, how is it determined which departments should be charter departments and which ones don't need to be? Are there any departments besides these?
These are all, these are all the main departments.
No, there's a couple. The Department of Neighborhood Assistance is one that was created by council 15 years ago or so. I don't believe it's ever been added to the charter, but it is a department that's in the code. So, and again, the Department of Planning and Urban Development is not listed here unless I'm missing it, and it's number 8.
Yeah, I guess this sounds like the perfect opportunity. Let's get everything on the table. Let's fix what maybe hasn't been included. Obviously, these are the heavy hitters, but let's establish, like a corporation has. They have 30 pages on a PowerPoint of their organizational chart. I don't know if it needs to be that specific, but it sounds like the perfect opportunity to let's establish what the flow chart is. So there's not some department or that maybe doesn't have a specific function or flow to someone that's supervisory in nature. It just sounds like a good opportunity to me.
Well, you don't necessarily want to put all the departments in the charter. I mean, the question is, what do you want to have to do in order to get rid of a department? Do you want to have to amend the charter, or would you rather be able to do it by ordinance? And so, I mean, that if there are departments that you might not want to have to amend the charter to get rid of, then you wouldn't want to put them in here. Now, I don't know whether there are such departments, but
the issue is this section exists here, and these are some of the main departments that the city has cabinet people in. However, based on what we just talked about under the previous section on 54, I mean, the ability to create other departments is there. The ability to abolish departments is there. So this list, can be changing throughout the years. Rather than remove it, it was just to add one of the main departments that was it's just recently established.
I think this section is being much more of the core of a city, so that if as it's been stated, if this is the city's constitution, so to speak, this document is saying you must have, we are establishing these, and I think the intent is that these are fundamental. These are the fundamentals, and then there may be some other divisions, some other things created that may come and go, but these are the main lifeblood of the city.
They can't be abolished except by charter amendment.
Correct.
Other comments, thoughts? I mean, I think there can't be any question that we should remove the Department of Health from there, since there really isn't one anymore. We have a new Department of Integrated Development. It encompasses a previous department that was not in here, correct? And other things. Yeah, was not in there. And so the question is, you know, do you want to make it semi-permanent, in that it can only be eliminated by charter amendment?
Perhaps it would be helpful to get the materials on the Department of Integrated Development and let the members have a dive into what that's about, and then perhaps, you know, again, revisit that after being able to get acquainted with the department, with the concept.
That might be helpful. I mean, one way to look at this is, you know, this is, hang on a second. Gotta get, somebody was calling me and it was going into my headphones. You know, the Department of Integrated Development is new. It's an interesting idea. It may prove to be, it may already have proven to be, but if not, may yet prove to be, and you know, a great innovation. But it is still pretty new. It can continue to exist without being in the charter. There's no question about that. Is it perhaps a little too new, a little too, I don't want to say experimental, but I'll just say innovative, you know, to warrant incorporation into the charter at this point? The same way that you have a Department of Finance, the Department of Public Safety, the Department of Public Service, et cetera. This doesn't go to whether there should be a Department of Integrated Development, just whether it's at the stage that it's ready to be made more or less permanent. Never let it be said that I don't know how to kill a conversation.
Well, I mean, I guess isn't the point, if we're going to revise this and we want to take a standard, we want to take a stance as to what are the departments that is the law director said, or sort of those that have some permanence to them, you know, we probably need to be thinking about. And I like the idea of sending out the materials on the Department of Integrated Development. I mean, it'd be very helpful for me to read them for one, because I was not aware of it.
Okay, so shall we postpone further discussion of this until we've had a chance to look at the materials on the department?
Yes.
Okay.
I will forward those to you guys by tomorrow. And then James Hardy, who is the current deputy mayor for integrated development, I'm sure he would be happy to join a future meeting and answer questions about the department. I don't think he knew that this was on the agenda for today, or he probably would have made himself available for this, but we will happily arrange that if that would be helpful.
It might well be helpful. Okay. Brian, did you have more?
I'm currently tapped out at this point.
Okay. I think we might all be tapped out. Is there anything else anyone would like to discuss about any of these matters now? If not, how would you all feel about adjourning? I'm getting a sense. Is there any objection to adjournment?
No.
No. No.
Okay, hearing none. I shall declare us adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.